He took the title of Genghis Khan. The Mongol tribes were united into one nation, one war machine. For Altan, the change was personal. He was no longer a member of a defeated tribe, but a soldier of the great Khan. His rise was also blessed by nature. An unusually warm and wet period created fertile grasslands that fed millions of horses, fueling the conquest machine that thundered across the steppe. Each blade of grass became a strand in the rope that tied vast lands to Mongol power. The Jin dynasty of northern China, which had long considered the Mongol tribes to be vassals, demanded that Genghis Khan show submission. His answer was contempt, an act of open defiance that shattered the old order and sparked one of the most brutal wars of the century. In 1211, the invasion began. A tide of horsemen swept southward, their banners fluttering against the endless sky. The Jin assembled a massive army to block the steppe warriors. Their commander, Wanyanjujin, placed faith in numbers but failed to act with urgency. His fatal mistake of hesitation gave the Mongols time to maneuver. Worse still, he sent an envoy to the Mongols, but the man defected and revealed the entire disposition of the Jin forces. At Yehuling, the Mongols struck a crushing blow. Using speed, deception, and ruthless precision, they trapped the Jin in a narrow pass. Arrows fell like black rain, drums thundered across the valley, and thousands of Jin soldiers were massacred. The victory opened the door to the Beijing plain. By 1213, the Mongols had laid siege to Zhengdu, the great Jin capital. Its massive earthen and stone walls seemed invincible to nomads, but the Mongols were quick to learn. They captured Chinese siege engineers, harnessing their knowledge of trebuchets and gunpowder bombs, turning the empire's own science against it. In 1215, Zhengdu fell, its riches consumed by fire and sword. Northern China lay bare. Westward, the thunder rolled. The first city in their path was Bukhara, a flourishing center of learning and commerce in the Khwarezmian Empire. The Mongols arrived not as mere raiders, but as a disciplined war machine, augmented by engineers from previous conquests. Trebuchets rose against the skyline, hurling stones that shattered walls. The city's garrison, mostly Turkic soldiers, attempted a desperate breakout, but rode straight into ambush. Almost all were cut down. Inside the walls, psychological warfare unfolded. Forged letters, whispers of betrayal, rumors of alliances, all sowing division and distrust. Shaken by fear and haunted by the fiery fate of Bukhara's neighbors, much of the garrison surrendered, but there was no mercy. Those who laid down arms were executed. Artisans were spared to serve the empire, but the rest perished. The conquest spread like wildfire. Samarkand, Urgench, and countless cities were reduced to rubble. Entire rivers were diverted to drown stubborn fortresses, erasing them from the earth. Survivors fled in terror, carrying with them tales of unstoppable horsemen who left nothing but ash and silence behind. Fear became a weapon, sharper than any sword. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the conquest did not cease. His heirs, bound by the mandate of expansion, carried the storm further. Batu Khan, his grandson, together with the brilliant General Subutai, turned west. Europe, fractured by feudal rivalries, would now face the steppe. The Mongols transformed one of Europe's greatest obstacles into their advantage: winter. Frozen rivers and marshes became highways for their cavalry. They struck at Ryazan, Moscow, Vladimir. Each city fell in flame and blood. By 1240, Kiev, the mother of Rus cities, lay in ruins. From the ashes of Rus, the Mongols advanced further. Subutai, a master of maneuver, orchestrated one of history's most sophisticated campaigns. He split his forces, sending one into Poland and another into Hungary, striking simultaneously like the pincers of a beast. At Legnica and Poland, European knights in heavy armor charged with confidence, only to be lured into a feigned retreat. Once separated from their infantry, they were encircled and annihilated by storms of arrows. 2 days later, at the Battle of Mohi in Hungary, Subutai repeated the stratagem with crueler artistry. He left a false gap in the encirclement. The Hungarians rushed toward what they thought was salvation, only to funnel themselves into a killing ground where arrows and fire consumed them. The Hungarian army ceased to exist. The door to Europe yawned open. Yet Europe was saved not by its swords, but by fate. In 1241, as the Mongols prepared to march further west, news arrived from Karakorum. The great Khan Ogadai was dead. By Mongol law, every prince had to return for the election of a new supreme ruler. And so at the very moment of triumph, the armies turned back. Europe breathed again, trembling with the unanswerable question, what might have happened had the storm not receded? Even as one front closed, another opened. To the east, the samurai of Japan faced the empire. Initially, the Mongols had the advantage. They fought in disciplined ranks, using drums, shields, and gunpowder grenades, shock and awe to warriors accustomed to single combat. In 1274, the Mongol fleet landed at Hakata Bay. Samurai were shaken, their duels drowned out by coordinated Mongol volleys. But nature, the oldest ally of the islands, rose in defense. A great storm, the Kamikaze, struck at night, wrecking the unfamiliar fleet and forcing survivors to retreat. The Japanese prepared. For 7 years, they built massive stone walls along their shores, anticipating the inevitable return. In 1281, Kublai Khan launched the greatest fleet the world had yet seen. Thousands of ships carrying more than 100,000 men. The invasion began, but the walls held. Weeks of brutal fighting followed, attrition grinding both sides. And then the heavens struck again. A second, even greater typhoon descended, annihilating nearly the entire fleet. The Mongols, masters of land, had been humbled by the sea. Southward, the storm sought another prize, Dai Viet, modern-day Vietnam. In 1258, after conquering Yunnan, the Mongols demanded passage through Vietnamese lands to attack the southern Song. The Tran dynasty refused. The first invasion came swiftly, but the Mongols faced an enemy they had not anticipated: terrain. Dense forests, tropical heat, and disease sapped their strength. Vietnamese forces withdrew, leaving Tong Long deserted, provisions stripped away, using the scorched earth strategy of empty houses, empty gardens. The Mongols starved, harassed by guerrilla strikes, and finally retreated. Nearly 3 decades later, they returned with far greater ambition. Kublai Khan's son Togon led the northern force, while General Tran Dao struck Champa in the south, aiming for a pincer movement. Champa fell, but the jungles again bled the invaders. In Dai Viet, unity reigned. At the Dien Hong Conference, elders, nobles, and commoners swore together to resist. Tran Dao's army, bogged down in the south, failed to unite with Togon. The strategy collapsed. Vietnamese forces under the legendary Tran Hung Dao pursued the retreating Mongols with relentless ferocity. The climax came at the Bach River. There, Tran Hung Dao revived an ancient stratagem. Thousands of sharpened stakes were driven into the riverbed, hidden beneath the tide. A small Vietnamese fleet lured the Mongols into the trap. As the tide fell, the stakes emerged, ripping through Mongol hulls, trapping the fleet in chaos. From the banks and the hidden channels, Vietnamese warships struck. Fire, arrows, and steel completed the slaughter. Deprived of their naval lifeline, the Mongol land forces disintegrated. 3 invasions had come, and 3 times Dai Viet had endured. Despite devastation across continents, when the wars ebbed, the Mongol Empire presided over an unprecedented order. Pax Mongolica stretched from the Pacific to the Mediterranean. The Yam communication system, relay stations with fresh horses and supplies, allowed couriers to traverse thousands of miles at unmatched speed. Silk, spices, knowledge, and even diseases traveled along its arteries. Merchants, missionaries, and scholars moved across lands that had once been fractured by war. The empire became a paradox. Born of conquest, it fostered connection. The legacy of the Mongols remains complex. To some, they were destroyers who turned cities to ash and erased nations. To others, they were unifiers who carved the first truly global network of trade and culture. Their story is one of contradiction, of terror and order, of blood and law, of devastation and creation. They remind the world that empires rise and fall not only by the sword, but by the fragile balance of nature, unity, and fate.